All right, Nick Houston here with Andy from Sony. How are you, Andy?
Doing great, Nick. How are you?
Good.
Glad to be back in person. Welcome to the Sony NAB 2022 booth. It's nice to be here in person again.
Absolutely, kicking off day 2.
Yes, day 2.
Great.
I wore more comfortable shoes today because yesterday was, Anyway.
I did not, and I wish I did.
Right.
As I should mention, we're live, so if there's anybody watching at home or wherever you may be in the world, feel free to leave your questions or comments below, and we will get them to Andy to answer. So, Andy, what is new?
So here at our booth, we're showing off our 2 families of wireless. We have our UWP-D family, which stands for UHF Wireless Package with Digital Signal Processing, and we also have our DWX Full Digital series. But the big news here is in the UWP-D family. We introduced our generation 4 of this series already a couple of years ago, but with the pandemic and all the other issues in the world, we were waiting to come out with a new 2-channel portable receiver. And that's what we're introducing here at the show. It's kind of brand new. It's called a URX-P41D. It's smaller and it's got a whole host of kind of pretty cool new features. But in general, one of the real benefits of this generation 4 of UWP-D has to do with NFC pairing. You don't have to go anymore even into the menu to start a scan. There is a top panel button which activates the scan, and then when you've found the frequency, you literally just hold a transmitter right up to it so the 2 little NFC logos are facing each other and the communication happens that way, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But specifically with the new URX-P41D dual channel receiver, in addition to the NFC, and we even maintained an IR port on the side for legacy transmitters and things like that of the 3rd generation, we've added something called sequential scanning and sequential pairing. What that really means is you don't have to do a single scan and pair up the 1st channel, leave that transmitter on, then scan again, hop over that frequency and find another channel and pair up the 2nd one. It all happens in one function. So I'll demonstrate this so you can see what it's like. And again, you don't have to go into the menus or anything. You just hold down the NFC sync button. After about 3 seconds, it starts scanning. And we'll talk about what it also says on there, which is all band scanned, but we'll talk about that after we do this. And it offers up the 2 best frequencies it found. And it flashes even the amount of background noise that it found in dB. I'm going to say, yes, I like those frequencies, although you can say, nah, give me 2 more, give me 2 more, 2 more. And yes, I want to set the frequencies. So now it's flashing black, white on the OLED display saying, okay, hold up your transmitter. And because the displays are facing each other, you can't see them, so the transmitter vibrates in your hand, letting you know that it's complete. And then it says, okay, give me the 2nd transmitter, hold it up, and it vibrates and it says RX TX2 complete, and you're done. That's as simple as it is. Very, very quick. But I mentioned that there are a few ways of scanning, but one of the methods that's particularly good, I'll preface this by saying that if you work in the same city, same location all the time, you certainly learn what are your best open white spaces to operate in. But if you're a photog that's on the road, or you're a sound guy, on the road, and you don't really know what is available in any particular city, we have a new mode that is called all band scan mode. This UWP-D series has a very wide spectrum coverage of 12 UHF TV channels, or 72 megahertz. We offer it in a 14 to 25 package, a 25 to 36 package, and also 941 to 960 package up in the ISM band. But let's take, for example, the 14 versions, we call it, which is UHF 14 to 25. To keep scan times reasonable, by menu selection, we split that up into 3 bands, 14 to 17, 18 to 21, 22 to 25. And in traditional group type scanning, it only scans within each one of those bands. In 14 to 17, it scans 4 UHF channels. And then you kind of look and see how much background noise, oh, channel 16 was kind of open, whatever. But then you change the band, and then you go to 18 to 21. You do another scan, and you make your notes, and you go to the last band. Well, it's just a little laborious. So now we have an all-band scan mode, which now does a scan all the way from 14 up through 25 in this particular unit, and will report back with the 2 lowest noise, highest quality channels it found. So that's kind of it helps if you're on the road and you're not really sure what's out there. But again, it offers up the 2 best frequencies, but if you don't like those for any reason, you can say, give me 2 more, give me 2 more, give me 2 more, and it will kind of change it. So that's a really interesting thing.
So this is also smaller than the previous version.
It is smaller, it's a little bit shorter, it's perhaps a tiny bit thicker, but the idea here is if you were mounting it on a camera, especially something like a mirrorless or DSLR, it doesn't extend out as far over the lens, and we've also introduced a new multi-interface shoe. Any of you that have Sony cameras may know that we have a unique way of interfacing any of our UWP-D receivers to many Sony cameras. Traditionally, and this can be used with any kind of camera out there, and we supply it, this dual one, with a dual locking mini to a stereo mini, so you could go into a mirrorless camera. It comes supplied with a couple of locking mini to XLR cables, all that kind of stuff. But in the case of Sony cameras, we have something called an MI shoe, and when you take this little adapter and you attach it to the bottom, then you can have the audio go directly right down through the shoe into the camera. No cables are required. And on top of it, you don't even need to have batteries in the unit, because the receiver can now derive its power off of the camera's battery, which is kind of cool. And it can even lighten things up a bit, because you don't have to be holding a couple of AA batteries if you're run and gunning it. But beyond that, a very interesting thing with this new MI shoe version, and this little MI shoe has a name that's so easy to remember, SMADP5, but this MI multi-interface shoe has a little switch on it, analog or digital. We've had this architecture out for many years called MI shoe. I have to say that at Sony we're in a bit of a unique position, because we make obviously cameras and we make audio gear, so the 2 engineering groups got together and they say, what could we do that would help users? Let's come up with this MI or multi-interface shoe kind of architecture. And in the original generation of those cameras that have MI shoe, it was an analog connection from the receiver kind of down into the camera. But in our latest generation of cameras, such as our FX3, FX6, FX9, Z280s, A7R4s, many of the latest alpha cameras, we have a new digital switch on that MI shoe, and since UWP-D, UHF wireless package, and the D stands for digital signal processing, where we do all of our companding in the digital domain mathematically, there are A to D converters and D to A converters built into these units, as well as into the transmitter. But once you've done your expansion of the companding step in a receiver, you have a choice of going through another D to A analog and then into the camera's A to D into the video file. But with this new digital switch, we can go right from the onboard DSP directly digitally into the camera's video file, bypassing a D to A and another A to D. And it really improves things even more sonically. So that's really exciting. And it's an interesting kind of architecture, this thing. It's obviously great for Sony cameras. It works only with Sony cameras if you're going to do that. But again, all of the UWP-D works beautifully with a lot of other cameras that are out there. Small cameras, mirrorless, DSLRs, larger cameras, so on and so forth. This can even operate with shoulder cams if you need to, because we make a slot-in version of the UWP-D receiver that fits into Sony slot size. This is not unislot size, so don't confuse that. But this is also even available in the 900 range. Now, one other thing that is really, I think, worth mentioning in the UWP-D family is all of the receivers have not only an audio output, they have a headphone jack. So that means that this can be a very high quality personal monitoring device. And it can be, since it's got the choice of 2,772 frequencies at 25 kilohertz spacing over a 72 megahertz tunable range, it can be frequency coordinated very, very easily with a whole bunch of Talent's microphones. But the idea is if you take a transmitter, having found a good frequency, and you now want to hang that on your bag or on your card or something like that, and you want to send that mix out to all the other people on set, this becomes a very easy to use personal monitoring device because you can obviously clip it to your belt, plug in a pair of headphones, you just reach down and the plus minus button becomes your volume control. And one other thing, say we have 15 people on set that all need their own personal monitoring devices. Well, what you would normally say is, oh, well, I've got this frequency on my transmitter, on my bag or my cart, but now I got to go and set all of those receivers to match that frequency. Well, guess what? You can use the NFC pairing to do that for you very easily and very quickly. The normal way is to scan on a receiver and then pair up a transmitter. But there's a menu in the receiver that can flip that the other way around. Tell the receiver to get its frequency information from the transmitter. So you got the one transmitter hanging off the bag of your cart, you got a pile of receivers, you pick it up, you go, pick up the next one, and then hand these out like candy. So that's a very fast way of using that. Now these can also be used as a great camera hop, and especially if you've got Sony cameras that can use the MI shoe integration. It's a very reasonably accessible and lower cost way of doing even stereo camera hops if you want to do that as well. So I think there's lots more in UWP-D, but I would just say that we're about to post online some new training videos that go into all the details of UWP-D, all the menus, all the functionality. So if you'd like to get more information on them, by all means, look for those videos, hopefully within a couple of weeks. We've got some early edits done, but we're getting there.
Great, so while we're here with UWP-D, let's see if there are any questions or comments from the internet.
No questions this time.
Great, no questions right now, so we're going to truck over to look at the higher end series and some SuperSlot integration.
Terrific.
So bear with us while we walk over. So let's just center right around there, and you can bring over whatever you'd like. Okay, so what do we have here? What's going on?
The big news, and we had talked about this previously, but just to make sure everybody understands, is we've been making true digital wireless since about 2009. We introduced it, behind the scenes at an AES show, I think in 2007. But we've been making true digital wireless for a very, very long time, and have constantly been updating it. But in addition to the rack mount units for studio and field and theatrical applications and live and all that, we've always had slot receivers. But up until this generation, prior to this generation, they had been a slot size configuration that was specific to a Sony slot, which was a little bit wider than Unislot, but this whole world of location sound is based on Unislot size. So this is our URX-S03D, digital wireless receiver. S stands for slot, third generation, D stands for dual channel. But this is Unislot size. And should you need it to go into a Sony configuration, you get it with a little 15-pin adapter, a couple little screws, and you can pull that off and buy the 25-pin Unislot adapter, put it on, and now what we've done here is we are mounting it in an SL2 with an 833, because we also now have SuperSlot firmware in these, and we can be controlled by the Sound Devices mixer and Aton mixers as well. By the way, I just have to throw out a bit of proud moment at the Academy Awards, even though there was plenty of brouhaha, you should know that one of the winning films, King Richard, was all done with Sony DWX.
Oh, cool.
Which is really, really cool. And the Best Picture of the Year, Coda, was shot on Sony Venice.
Oh.
So we had a big year for Sony at the Academy Awards, really, really nice.
I have friends that worked on both those movies, I'm very proud to say.
Right, but Ed Tice, a very well-known, famed location sound mixer, has been using our digital wireless for many, many years. And so he did King Richard, and I'm very proud of the fact, and thank you to Ed. So anyway, we're showing it here, and the idea is that this slot receiver, obviously I'm saying it's true digital, but it's got true double tuner diversity. So there's 4 tuning sections inside of this unit. Obviously they share off a pair of antennas, but it's true double tuner diversity with something we call X dimension diversity, which you can look up online, but it's not just looking for the level difference between an A and a B tuner on a channel, it's also looking for digital data synchronization and phase information, and a lot of things to make the best choice of diversity reception. And that's really going into the weeds. But, because it is true double tuner diversity, in a card application, you could even consider putting it into an audio limited A10 rack, and you could have 4 units in there, which would give you 8 channels of true double tuner diversity with Dante out the back into a Dante mixer, and you can get an awful lot of really very high quality channels, true digital channels, in a very small space for a card. We also, at Sony, for any of you that know, we are a codec happy company. We've come out with so many different cameras, and they all have different codecs, but in audio land, we also have mathematicians that develop our own codecs. And when you design A to Ds and D to As, you're always kind of saying, do I want to hold on to the signal a little bit longer and do a better conversion job, but that adds latency. So you're always balancing sound quality versus latency. Well, we don't buy off-the-shelf codecs, we develop our own because we have lots of mathematicians that do that, and we have the absolute shortest latency in the business. We have a choice in these units of 4 different codecs, and codec number 2 is down to a very, very short latency of 1.2 milliseconds. So that's, really, really kind of nice. I will just mention that in addition to that, on the transmitter side, we have our traditional AA battery, kind of body pack, but we have our micro body packs. And DWP-B03R, and this uses little CyberShot camera batteries. And you get about 7 hours at the mid-power level. But we also have hooked up to this, and it's got a LEMO-style connector on it, but just to make sure that you know, and I know I've talked about this before, but here I have hooked up an ECM90 lav. Just so you know that, this is a very small lav microphone, but the common problem with all lavs is cable rubbing noise, and don't ever tell a Sony engineer that they can't solve a problem. Making a smaller and smaller capsule design means that if you put a round diaphragm in the round tip of a capsule, the diaphragm gets so small that you suffer in frequency response loss, the noise goes up, the dynamic range goes down. And our engineers did not want to suffer those trade-offs, quite honestly, just to be able to offer a smaller capsule. But the real problem comes, as we all know, or you all probably know, with cable rubbing noise, buried cables and things like that. And the reason that really happens is because when you try to put a tiny round diaphragm in the tip of a lav, you want to maximize its size so you don't lose frequency response and all that stuff. But maximizing the size means you have to minimize the size or the quality of the mounting of that diaphragm, and the isolation of it is very bad, or poor, I would say. So our Sony engineers said, well, is there some unwritten law that we don't know about that says you can only put a round diaphragm in the round tip of a capsule? Well, here they decided to put a large rectangular diaphragm down the side of the capsule body. It's so large that it can do a full 20 to 20K response, incredibly quiet, very wide dynamic range. And the real beauty of it is it has a very generous isolation mounting tray for that diaphragm. But then we took and we said, let's put a second diaphragm on the other side of the capsule. So you got double diaphragms, parallel, but a huge amount of diaphragm space. And we get rid of just about 95% of the cable noise. It's just not there. It's not due to coatings on the cable or pliability. It's all in the capsule design. And I've had some people that have used this, as plant mics, and they said it even works great in the headliner of a car, where you can put it up in the ceiling of a car. And since it's an Omni mic, but it's got two slits, you can point one slit to the passenger in the car, one to the driver, and cover the entire thing with this really, really tiny little microphone. Great to fit into a headboard, very easy to hide as a plant mic, but also beautiful as a talent mic as well. So ECM 90LM, it's also properly shielded for use with digital transmitters. I think that's kind of what I wanted to say on that.
Okay, great. Are there any questions here? And also, while we wait for questions, just want to show us the screens on the, how the integration between the SL2 and the 833 goes?
No questions at this time.
That was a question. Do you mind just showing us what the screens look like on the SL2 to interact with the Sony wireless?
Oh, I can't really take you. I just set this up yesterday. I haven't even had a chance to go through and pre-set up anything, so that would be a disaster, I'm afraid.
Okay, we'll not do that, but it is something that works.
It's all there. And effectively, from the screen of the 833, you command each of the receivers to go and scan and set all that stuff up, and then the receivers themselves can talk remotely via Zigbee, at a distance to paired transmitters to send out all the settings to the transmitters, and you can change all the settings on the transmitter via the Zigbee pairing and so on and so forth. And these receivers are all full frequency, no blocks. They go all the way from UHF-14 up through slivers in 38, as a matter of fact.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time.
Appreciate
it.
Everybody.
Great to
thank
see
you
you
very much for hanging in there.
I do have a question. Andy, did you point out that it still works in the SL2? You can still do Zigbee control, just not through the sound noise?
Yeah, the idea here is that when you have the mixer can command the slot receivers to scan, it'll come up with its best choice. And then instead of just commanding through the mixer to tell the receiver to talk remotely to Zigbee to the transmitters, you just reach right up and you hit the set button, I think 2 or 3 times, and the receiver's Zigbee pairing command talks to the paired transmitter. So instead of doing it here...
And that's just for the North American model.
And that's just for the North American model. It's not that way in the European version of the firmware that comes with the 833, as I understand.
Beautiful. Any other questions?
No other questions.
All right, very good.
I got one thing I got to say.
What's that?
People always pay attention to numbers and all this stuff. For years I had just been saying, what's the transmission distance? How far away can I go? And I just routinely would say, 300 feet, that. But I wanted to find out. So I took a body pack and my cell phone playing music, and I put it out at the end of our Sony parking lot and playing music, and put this all in the branch crook of the tree. And then I took our portable battery sled with the slot receiver and a headphone output, and I got in my car and I drove down the road while holding this out the window, and I listened for the first dropout. It was a sunny day, there were 20, 30, 40 trees in the way, but when I got the first dropout, I was right at the curve of the road and at a brand new big building, and I went back on Google Earth, and it has a ruler tool, you can measure point A to point B. It was 1,437 feet before I got my first dropout. So transmission distance is insane. We've got new high density modes in here, so you can fit 16 digital channels at no loss in quality or functionality or anything within each 6 megahertz TV channel. You got multiple 6, you can keep adding them, all intermod free. Anyway, that's enough. I can go on for this for a long time, but I think you've had enough.
Well, I'm sure there are other people that want your time too. So thank you for taking the time with us.
My pleasure. Really nice seeing you guys again.
Yeah, and we'll hope to see you soon.
Okay.
As always, you can watch this video and more on GothamSound.tv. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And if you have any questions, please email us at info@gothamsound.com. Stay tuned for more live from NAB 2022.